Chapter 1 The Sound of Where You Are. I've always felt unclaimed. This is a story of the ways I created a territory, something more than just an archipelago of identities, something that could steady me, somewhere that I belonged. My story starts with me as a fan, and to be a fan is to know that loving trumps being beloved. All the affection I poured into bands, into films, into actors and musicians was about me and about my friends. Once, in high school, I went to see the B-52s. I pressed myself against the barrier until bruises darkened my ribs, thrilled to watch Kate Pearson drink from a water bottle, only to have my best friend tell me that to her the concert wasn't about the band, it was about us. It was about the fact that we were here together, that the music itself was secondary to our world, merely something that coloured it, spoke to it. That's why all those records from high school sound so good. It's not that the songs were better, it's that we were listening to them with our friends, drunk for the first time on liquors, touching sweaty palms, staring for hours at a poster on the wall, not grossed out by carpet or dirt or crumpled, oily bedsheets. These songs and albums were the best ones because of how huge adolescence felt then, and how nostalgia recasts it now. Nostalgia is so certain. The sense of familiarity it instills makes us feel like we know ourselves, like we've lived. To get a sense that we have already journeyed through something, survived it, experienced it, is often so much easier and less messy than the task of currently living through something. Though hard to grasp, nostalgia is elating to bask in, temporarily restoring colour to the past. It creates a sense memory that momentarily stimulates context. Nostalgia is recall without the criticism of the present day. All the good parts, memory without the pain. Finally, nostalgia asks so little of us, just to be noticed and revisited. It doesn't require the difficult task of negotiation, the heartache and uncertainty that the present does. Now, I can't just listen to some of these records alone, in my house that I've cleaned and organised, books arranged, just so, sheets washed. The sounds don't hold up. In these cases, fandom is contextual and experiential. It's not that it happened, it's that you were there. It's site-specific, age-specific. Being a fan has to do with the surroundings, and to divorce the sounds from that context often feels distancing, disorienting, but mostly disappointing. I think of all the times I've had a friend over and pulled out records from high school or college, ready for the album to change someone's life the way it changed mine. I watch my friend's face, waiting eagerly for the aha moment to arrive, only to realise that my affection for this intentionally off-key singing, saggy bass sound and lyrics about bunnies isn't quite the revelation it was 15 years ago. Quote, "You had to be there" is not always a gloat or admonishment. Often it's an explanation for why something sounds utterly terrible. Yet, there is much music that survives and recontextualization, and that needs no experiential reference point. In this case, the role of the fan is still to be a participant, and to participate is to grant yourself permission to immerse, to willingly, gladly, efforts, and subsume yourself for the sake of the larger meaning, but also to provide meaning. It's symbiotic. My favourite kind of musical experience is to feel afterward that your heart is filled up and transformed, like it is pumping a new kind of blood into your veins. This is what it is to be a fan, curious, open, desiring for connection, to feel like art has chosen you, claimed you as its witness. I grew up in the suburbs of Seattle, mostly in Redmond, Washington, a once rural town that by the late 20th century was a metonym for Microsoft. Cities frequently deride or deny their outlying residents, thinking them callow. Seattle was my beacon and muse, but it was never really mine. My parents, both raised Jewish in Chicago, were quick to adopt the religion of Christmas, though I should acknowledge the transitional years wherein we awoke to scattered presents under a menorah. Poor Santa, arriving during the night with nothing to choose from but that menorah and a houseplant. Then my mother left when I was 14, seeking a cure for herself, but leaving another form of sickness and longing behind. It was a childhood of halfways, of in-betweens. Until I was in high school, every concert I attended was an event, a spectacle. My first was Madonna. She began her Like a Virgin tour in Seattle, playing 3 shows at the Paramount Theatre with a capacity of less than 3,000. It was 1985 and I was in 5th grade. An agreement was made between my father and my friend's mum. She'd get up at an unkind hour on a Saturday morning so that we could wait in line at Ticketmaster, and my dad would stay out past his bedtime and accompany us to the actual show. I had my outfit planned. I wanted to wear what any self-respecting female Madonna fan would want to wear in the mid-80s, a wedding dress. I even asked to borrow my mum's, as if she'd be as flattered as she would have been had I asked to wear it for my real future wedding. That's inappropriate, I was told by both my parents, not just in regard to the wedding garment, but also in response to my request to wear a crop top with nothing underneath it but a black bra. I didn't need to wear a bra at the time. Even fingerless lace gloves were out of the question. I ended up clad in a short-sleeve Esperett button-up covered with pineapples and other exotic fruits, an outfit that did not land me in the local paper, that ran as feature on the concert, including pictures of fans waiting in line dressed like Madonna. By the time the music began, I didn't care that I looked like a cocktail server at a beach resort. Opening the show was a group of young, smart Alex who no one in the Pacific Northwest had ever heard of. They were called the Beastie Boys. We collectively booed them in anticipation of our idol. Then Madonna came out and I only remember 2 things. She did multiple outfit changes and I screamed the entire time. When my father and I got home, I couldn't sleep. I kept going into my parents' room to regale my mother with details about what songs Madonna played and how she looked. "She's high," my dad said to my mother, laughing. And I was. It was a moment I'll never forget, a total elation that momentarily erased any outline of darkness. There was light everywhere I looked. A few years later, in junior high, I saw the Faith Tour and witnessed George Michael run in tight pants from east to west and back again across the stage. From my seat on the centre of the stadium floor, Michael was reduced in size, an action figure. But the experience itself was immense. The grandiosity was ungraspable. It was the Olympics. It was a mountain. It was outer space. In the middle of the show, my 14-year-old friend turned to me and said, "I want to give George Michael a blowjob." I was confused. Wasn't I there simply for the songs, to clap my hands and scream, "I want your sex," without actually wanting your sex? But when my friend inserted desire, an actual longing and physical response, into what I thought had been an abstract idea, I had to think about the ways music really made me feel. In that moment, among thousands of people, I was lightheaded and sweaty. I could not contain a smile. My body was moving in somewhat innocent shimmies, but also in shudders, an act that certainly connotes a deeper, reflexive, ecstatic response. I turned away from my friend, nodding in agreement that, Yes, the reaction to this music was embodied, was intense. But I also knew in that moment that I would much rather be the object of desire than dole it out from the sidelines or perched on my knees. Yet the music I was hearing and the concerts I was witnessing were also mystifying and inaccessible. It was the 80s, and much of what I loved was synthed-out pop and top 40 music, more programmed than played. The music was in my room and in my body, yet I had no idea how it had been assembled or how to break it apart. If I wanted to learn a Madonna song, for example, I'd obtain the piano sheet music and plunk out an anemic version of it on the keys, so wholesome that I was re-virginizing like a virgin right there in the living room. I practiced Davy Lee Roth stage moves. Well, only one, jump, and entered my elementary school talent show as a dancer accompanying a band of 6th graders playing ruts round and round. I remained merely a fan, an after-school bedroom lip-syncer and a family gathering shanks for humouring me entertainer, with no means of claiming the sounds as my own. Then I brought my first guitar and saw my first punk and rock shows. Buying your first guitar in the suburbs does not entail anything that resembles the folklore. There is not an old bluesman who gifts you a worn-out, worn-in instrument with a sweat and blood-stained fretboard, neck dusty from the rails, possessing magic but also a curse. Rather, you go with your mum or dad to a carpeted store that smells of antiseptic, where everything is shiny and glistening with newness, where other parents are renting saxophones or clarinets for their kids to play in the school jazz band, where some other kid is being publicly denied a drum kit on account of his parents' sanity. The cheapness, the vagueness of brands, the generic aspect of it all screams, "Warehouse for the non-committal." I left with a Canadian-made solid-state amp and a cherry-red Epiphone copy of a Stratocaster. It was the first big purchase I made with my own money. I was 15. In 10th grade, a few of my friends were old enough to drive, and I started making my way out of the suburbs and into Seattle on the weekends. Some of the shows we saw were at big venues, like the Moore or the Paramount Theatre, the Church, the Ramones, Sonic Youth, the Jesus and Mary chain. But most of the time we'd go to smaller places like the Party Hall or the OK Hotel, and we'd see Northwest-based bands like Tree People, Kill Sibyl, Hammerbox, Engine Kid, Aspirin Feast, Galleon's Lap, Christ on a Crutch, and Positive Greed. Here I could get close to the players themselves. I could see how the drums worked on the guitars and bass. I could watch fingers move along the frets and feet stomp down on effects pedals. I saw the set lists taped to the floor, and sometimes I was close enough to see the amp or pickup settings. I observed the nature of the bands, their internal interactions, their relationships to one another, as much as I listened. It seems obvious, but it was the first time I realised that music was playable, not just performable, that it had a process and a seed, a beginning, middle, and end. Everyone who plays music needs to have a moment that ignites and inspires them, calls them into the world of sound and urges them to make it. And I suppose this form of witness could happen orally. Perhaps it's as easy as hearing an Andy Gill riff or a Kim Gordon cadence, and knowing intuitively how that all works. Then you form those rounds yourself, with your own hands and your own voice. Or maybe you see it on a video, in footage of a musician who finally translates and unlocks what you thought was a mystery. For me, however, I needed to be there, to see artists like Kim Warnick and Kurt Bloch of the Fastbacks, or Doug Marsh of Tree People play chords and leads, or Calvin Johnson and Heather Lewis from Beat Happening in the Wally relatable attire of threadbare t-shirts and jeans shorts, enact a weird nerd sexiness, strangely minimal, maximally perverse. I could watch them play songs that weren't coming out of thin air or from behind a curtain. I needed to press myself up against small stages, risking crushed toes, bruised sides, and the unpredictable undulation of the pit, just so I could get a glimpse of who I wanted to be.